Hi, I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is WiseGirl for your Tuesday, October 25th already. I can't believe it. Just wanted to say thanks for the comments on the ones I posted yesterday. I think some people really could resonate or felt like the disruption talk was resonating with them in a new way, sort of a paradigm shift, a way of thinking about things a little bit differently. And I'd also like to perhaps submit today to talk a little bit about thinking differently about what it means to be sad or in a position of sorrow or grief or loss or mourning, and how oftentimes in the society that we live in now, we're really not encouraged to really fully feel what that is for us, and that how sometimes we get stuck there. And those feelings get actually sort of calcified within our bodies in ways that are psychosomatic sometimes, our mental faculties or abilities are off, and we just really don't feel well in our spirit. And there's an additional part that we put on ourselves oftentimes that says, well, I should feel better and I should feel beyond where I am. It's been a year since I was betrayed in my relationship, or 6 months or 2 years since I was fired from my job, or hey, Penny. So it's one of those things that oftentimes I think in our lives, things happen. Everything's impermanent. Oftentimes things happen unexpectedly. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and her nephew, who is 36 years old, just really just dropped dead after running a half marathon and was married with 2 children. So every day is precious, but how can we really appreciate those days and our precious time as it is without feeling like, why am I so miserable? And what can I do about this? And I shouldn't be miserable. I want to start by saying a couple of things. One is oftentimes when bad things happen to us, we feel like it's our fault or because we are a bad person. That is what shame is all about, right? That there's something fundamentally wrong with who we are. Guilt is more along the lines of something wrong with something we've done, meaning that we feel guilty because we feel as though an action that we took wasn't appropriate and hurt someone else, and we didn't intend for that to happen. But shame is actually more about whether or not we feel as though there's something wrong with us and that we don't know how to rectify it. And when bad things happen to us or in the world that affect us in a way that makes us sad, we often take that on and really sort of continue to click in to this feeling of not being worthy, not being good enough, not doing it right. And that kind of perpetuates a habit of then, unfortunately, being more accustomed to that kind of behavior, meaning getting disappointed or betrayed or otherwise set up for having the rug pulled out from under you. And I never really believed that until more recently when I started doing a lot of research on neuroscience. And what the neuroscientists are telling us, including a book I'm reading right now called Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hansen. There's also a lot of work being done right now by a man named Dr. Dan Siegel, Siegel, is that really the neurons that fire together wire together. So what ends up happening is when something negative happens to you, it often will trigger maybe a past wound, like a more sensitive area in us from our conditioned childhood, maybe a parent that was neglectful or a situation that was abusive or something like that. And we sort of naturally, unfortunately, glom onto that and sort of tell ourselves and repeat those stories again and again and again. For example, when my ex dumped me a couple days before our would-have-been wedding, 10 or 11 years ago now, I really took it on and felt like it was all my fault. Now, I'm not saying there weren't things that I did in that relationship that weren't, I certainly could have been more skillful in terms of how I handled that relationship, as many of us can be in our relationships with our partners or even our family or friends. But it took me almost 9 years, 7 years maybe, 9 years, to really shift from a place of understanding that it wasn't just about who I was, right? It was something that happened that was more interdependent and dynamic based on a whole set of circumstances. But a couple years ago, I was able to really kind of see more clearly that this event wasn't precipitated by the fact that I was a bad person. Sure, maybe I could have acted more skillfully in certain situations, and sure, there were opportunities for us both to, sort of come together in ways that would have been more fruitful. But, I didn't have the skills or the tools, but fundamentally I didn't have the belief that underneath it all I was a good person, and I didn't understand why. Well, let's go back to the neuroscience. Like I said, this book is called Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hanson. I'm not advertising it per se, I'm just giving you some information as to one of the places you might be able to go and learn a little more about this stuff if you're interested. But the neurons that fire together wire together, this business of neuroplasticity, and what does it mean? Well, it means that, in this book anyway, he's talking about bringing in the good. He's basically saying when you have a positive experience, whether it's something like just enjoying a meal or some pretty flowers or a refreshing day like today in New York, it's really nice and brisk out, to just really stop and savor it and really appreciate and enjoy it. Or with your partner or your child or your friend that you really enjoy a nice time. Don't just sort of pass through and like go to brunch and enjoy the brunch and then go back to your other thoughts. Savor it. Spend a little extra time in a way replaying the goodness of that situation in your mind. Because cumulatively, what this does, he argues, over time, and I think the neuroscience proves this in a lot of studies with MRIs and research done at top universities all around the world, is that we start to actually change the structure of our brains, right? So me talking about mindfulness and meditation and all of this kind of rethinking is more to try and submit to you an invitation to say, do you think that you could take on the belief that, in fact, A, we're fundamentally good, B, bad things happen to us sometimes that condition us to believe certain things about ourselves that aren't true, C, we act in ways that aren't necessarily skillful and therefore create more, negative events in our lives sometimes than we even realize, but D, that's not really our fault because it so happens that that's the way our brains work. We have sort of a negativity bias, but E, right? I know my alphabet. We actually have the power to change this. And this is something that was sort of more anecdotal before, but now it is becoming much more proven in the science and the research that's coming out. And so that's why a little bit goes a long way. So fundamentally, if you can start to incorporate those principles, you can see that the neuroplasticity of the brain starts to change and it becomes easier to do things in a new way that's more positive. And then good things start happening more often and start sort of coming into your life. So it's sort of that law of attraction, For Agreement's a Secret. I haven't read those books, but I've heard that they're similar insofar as that the energy of good things starts coming toward you as opposed to you always having to cultivate it and create it in some sort of Pollyanna way that may seem artificial or not true to where you're really at. So this is a really long video. I guess I'm going to stop here, but I hope that makes some sense for now. And if it doesn't, or if it does, and you have anything to say about it, please leave some comments, tweet me, talk about it, do whatever it is that you can do, and let's communicate. All right, thanks. I'll see you soon.